You know what's hard? Helping somebody, supporting somebody who's grieving. Maybe a loved one died, they got fired, some kind of accident of some sort, and you are that person there at that time to help them through that grief. This is something that happens to everybody. Sooner or later, they are that person. And it's hard because we don't know what to say and we don't know what to do and we can't make the pain go away. So, it's a very challenging situation to be in. I have found a passage of scripture that provides good, sound, practical advice that everybody can do, and I want to share it with you now. I hope you don't have to use it soon, but I know someday you will, and I hope you remember these words. It's a passage out of the book of Job, Job chapter 2. Many of you know the story. Job was a rich man, great family, and in a very short period of time, he basically lost everything. Well, his friends find out about it, and they come and to support him through this time. And you pay careful attention to the things that they did, and I think it can help us. So Job chapter 2, beginning with verse 11. Let me read it now, and we're going to break it down. It says, when Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud and tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. And I can see 7 things that I want to share with you as pieces of practical advice when it comes to supporting somebody who is grieving. And number 1 comes from the beginning of the passage where it says, when his friends found out, they set off to go support Job. And the bottom line, point number 1 is go. The rule of thumb is when you hear about somebody who's had something bad happen to them, who's grieving, go and show support. Reach out. If you can go there personally, go there personally. Reach out by phone. Do something to show that you care, you support them. My experience has been that when you do that, people are grateful. People are thankful. 99.9% of the time, people are glad and humbled and very appreciative that you reached out to support them. Now, there's going to be a voice in your head that says, it's telling you, it's going to say, but they're busy, or but they don't want to see me at this time. Don't talk yourself out of doing the right thing. Job's friends didn't do that. The Bible says when they found out what was going on with Job, they went. That's point number 1. And then it says, before they got to Job, it says they met together. And that is so important because point number 2 is team is best. Go as a team if you can, because it is hard. It is awkward. You're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know what to say. And so you're going as a team maybe to support your brother or sister who's alongside of you. You're supporting one another. I've done too many death notifications. And when the Army sends out a death notification, it's a team. It is 2 people to support one another because what they're doing is hard. And I don't know if Job's friends knew that or this was intentional or just, divine guidance or luck or whatever it was. But they did the right thing because they met together before they went to Job. They came to Job as a team. It does say, and this is the 3rd point, that when they saw him, they began to weep aloud. I think it says they tore their clothes and put dust on their head. Tearing your clothes and dust on your head, those were cultural signs back then that you're grieving, that you're upset, that something is greatly wrong. Just like crying is or was back then and still is today. And it says that when they saw Job, they began to weep aloud. Point number 3 is it's okay to cry. Think about the impact that it had on Job. I think number 1, Job seeing his friends cry, I was like, yes, I'm not alone. They're upset too. I'm not carrying this burden by myself. There are other people upset by this. And just affirmed Job in his position he was in. But number 2, I also think it gave Job permission to cry. If they're crying, then I cry too. And you might say, well, I need to be strong for the person that I'm supporting. And I'll say, yes, I agree with you. You do need to be strong for the person that you're supporting, but being strong doesn't mean not crying. It is okay to cry. We're going to go to point number 4. It says when they saw Job and they had that initial encounter, it says, then they sat down on the ground with him. Be where the person is. Might not have been the most comfortable place to be. Maybe they'd rather have been on the couch or the easy chair. Might have been dirty down there. Who knows what was going on the ground down there. But that's where Job was, and that's where they went to. You go where the person is. I think about, the chaplains who go out there in the cold or in the rain when their soldiers are out in the field, and it's such impressive ministry to go exactly where they're at. And that's what Job's friends did there. And I think that that's impressive. You go where the person is, even if it's not the most comfortable place. And that brings us to point number 5, believe it or not. It says for 7 days and for 7 nights, which is a week, a long time. Support can be or will be a sacrifice. It might be costly. It's going to cost you time. It might cost you resources. It's definitely going to cost you energy. It's going to be a challenge, but you give what is needed, as long as it takes, is point number 5. And I'll never forget a friend of mine whose brother suddenly, tragically, unexpectedly died. And, we were down his basement, and he kept saying, as long as you guys are here, I will be okay. And I can picture Job saying the same thing. As long as you guys are here, I will be okay. Then we move to number 6, and very interesting. It says they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days, 7 nights. Now listen, no one said a word to him. 7 days, 7 nights, no one said a word to Job. Maybe Job spoke, but they didn't speak to him. They sat and they listened in silence. Point number 6 is that silence is golden. As a matter of fact, and you might even been thinking this if you're familiar with Job, in Job chapter 2, they're silent, but they start talking in Job chapter 3, and that's when the bottom falls out. That's when their ministry collapses. That's when they end up getting in arguments with Job about whose fault it was. They were better off keeping their mouths shut. When they kept their mouths shut, healing was taking place with Job. The instant they talked, they were saying stuff that they regretted, and encourage you to do the same thing. Keep your mouth shut for as long or for as often as you can. People don't lose intimacy when they stop talking. They lose intimacy when they stop listening. Silence is golden. Now, I know silence can be awkward, and our tendency is to fill the empty space up with words, but I'm telling you, silent presence can be the best presence. And finally, the last point. It says that no one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. Point number 7 is, follow their lead. Let the grieving person lead you. And it says Job's friends, they said nothing. Why? Because they saw how great his suffering was. They were watching him, and they were basing their reactions upon what he presented. And I think you pay attention to that person who is grieving, and you make your moves or your non-moves, or your words or your non-words, based upon what they're demonstrating to you. So those are 7. Let's do 7. 7 things. Practical things that you can do to support somebody who's grieving. You go. Remember that team is best. Remember that it's okay to cry. Sit where the person is. For as long as it takes, silence is golden, and follow their lead. I really hope that you do not have to use this guidance, because it means somebody is hurting. But someday, because the world we live in is a broken, fallen world, you will. And when you do, I hope you remember Job chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. Walk in peace, have the best day possible, and stay awesome.